I was told no for seven figure. And so maybe that's part of it, because I felt like I had something to prove. Like, I can do it. I was told no. I went back. I started marketing and put a bunch of deals on the board, and then went to Salt Lake City, met with Andy, and got the invite.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. This is Bill Allen, and today I've got the next episode in our Entrepreneurial Leap series. So, are you an entrepreneur? So, we're going through the 6 traits that Gino Wickman talks about in his book, Entrepreneurial Leap. And remember, a trait is a genetically determined characteristic that he talks about. So, you either have these 6 or you don't. And we've gotten the board of directors together of Seven Figure Flipping, and each one of them have one trait that really stands out to me when I sat down and looked. And it just so happened that there were 6 traits and there's 6 of them. So I'm bringing each of them on the podcast just to give you guys a little refresher. The 6 traits are visionary, passionate, problem solver, driven, risk taker, and responsible, where responsible is like being responsible for your actions and outcomes, like ownership. So today we're in the 4th episode talking about driven, and I've got my good friend Jeremiah Johnson with me today. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm doing really well. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing good. So man, before, the way I've been starting these is I'm kind of reading the first couple of paragraphs of that chapter in the book about that trait, and then just asking people like, do you think that you have that? So let me start by just reading the first maybe like paragraph or 2 about driven, so everybody's listening kind of understands what that looks like. So here's what he says. The 4th essential trait, driven. The definition of driven is operated, moved, or controlled by a specific source of power. Driven people have a strong sense of urgency. This trait is essential to success. Whether you're trying to prove something to someone, trying to avoid the life you had growing up, or trying not to be a failure, these are some of the roots of an entrepreneur's drive. This trait is very different from the trait of passion. Whereas being passionate is about passion for your product or service, being driven is about an internal fire that you want to succeed, regardless of what the product or service is. Driven people are tenacious, competitive, self-motivated, goal-oriented, growth-oriented, and never give up. They hustle. They want to succeed. Driven means not settling for second best. You're relentless. In order for your business to be successful, you have to want to win, because there will always be competing forces. If you only take what comes, you'll find your company slipping backward. Only your drive to succeed will break down barriers to grow to the next level. So, are you driven is what it ends this paragraph or this chapter in. So what do you think? Are you driven?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
From the start to now, it's still happening, you know?
So I think the interesting thing is when I read this stuff, and I really don't love like reading aloud to people that are listening, tripping up on words and stuff, especially entrepreneur. It's like one of the hardest words that I can say and let alone spell. So, but when I read this stuff, it gives me like the chills sometimes of like, man, that is me, totally me. So what do you think it is about you? And let's talk about your drive a little bit. So you talked about from the beginning till now. So what was it like in the beginning? Let's go back to there. And where do you think that came from?
It started before real estate. I sold cards door to door, like sales leadership cards as a kid, because I wanted a jungle gym. And I have been goal driven. So you talked about a trait. I mean, it's just been something that's been in me since I was a kid. And then starting most recently in the real estate investing and wholesaling and flipping, it was something that I saw other people doing it, and I'm super competitive. And so it was one of those, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And also I wanted that financial freedom. It actually started with my 2 sons. I did really well in medical sales, and I was a typical American consumer, and my spending rose to meet my income. And I just didn't see how I was going to save, the amount of money that I needed to save for college for the boys. And so I started investing in real estate, and then I saw how powerful it could be. But as far as driven, the relentless pursuit, been through a lot of ups and downs in the last 3 years in starting a business, and that trait has helped me to weather those storms. Just not going to quit.
So I think we'll talk about that. But before we do, you mentioned like the need to win. So this is kind of, as I was reading that, I was going, man, yeah, you don't ever want to be second best. It's this drive to win, and you're always kind of I remember meeting you at the first Flip Hacking Live. I think we maybe it was it the second one or the first one? I think it was the first one. Yeah,
Yep.
and just meeting you, it was very interesting when we had some things in common with my son was about to be born with a heart defect. And
Yep.
so I remember that conversation, but you basically were just like, you were intense. And I think that's a big part of what I get from you all the time. Like you're constantly you feel like you're going full out all the time. And I think that's part of that is drive, right? And it's that competitiveness. And I feel it too. I don't ever really want to be second. I remember sitting in that first mastermind meeting, those first 7-figure flipping meetings, knowing that I'm not going to win the race to $1 million, but knowing that even if I had a chance, like I'm going to figure out how to go from one deal to $1 million in a year if I can figure out how to do it. And I never really talk about it. Like I'm not in your face competitive, like I'm going to crush you kind of thing, but it's always in my mindset and the way that I'm actually going about running my business. So,
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that same thing in you. So where do you think that came from? Like, if you look back, like where did that come from as a kid? Were you really athletic, or were you really competitive as a kid? Were your parents pushing that on you? What was it?
I was small and I wasn't real athletic. I was kind of a late bloomer, if you will. And maybe that was part of it. Is I always felt like I was catching up. And so it instilled in me that I just am going to do whatever I need to do to get it done, and when I did, like I said, it went back to when I was selling cards. I wanted that jungle gym. My parents said, well, you have to save for it. Saving with an allowance took forever. So I figured out a way to buy it. So I don't know. I don't know what started it, but it's just, I've got it.
Yeah. And the reason I ask you that is because when I look back, I have no idea either. Like, I really just don't know. And like they said, it's a genetically determined characteristic, it seems. And, my question is like, it's interesting because and what he mentions in the book a lot of is you have other family members that don't have this trait. So it's a lot of times it's not upbringing. So you'll have like one brother and two brothers, for example. One of them is totally driven and the other one is just, I don't know what the opposite of driven is, maybe lazy, but just is okay with being second or third or fourth or not even competing and things like that. And so that's why he talks about genetic as opposed to something that is really kind of instilled from an upbringing, this kind of nurture side. So it's more of a nature versus nurture thing. And so it's interesting because when I look back, like, I can't really pinpoint where I became like super competitive and have this drive and want to win and be the best at everything that I do. But I have no idea where it came from and I can't really describe it. But I remember even when I was little, I would want to, run faster. I wanted to climb higher than other kids. I wanted to figure out how to win the contest or the competition. Very competitive. So, and I think that plays really well into what we do as entrepreneurs and business owners, because all these other traits, like we have to be the visionary, we have to be a risk taker, we have to be passionate, we have to take ownership, we have to do all of these other things. But that drive, and as I list them all out, I don't think one is any more important than the other, but you have to have them, right? So this one is one that sometimes can be looked at as a negative, where somebody's really competitive or really driven, and it will, there could be a negative side to this that we'll probably get into at the end, but I think it just comes from who we are. And like you said, you just got it, right? And I feel like I just got it. And I think most entrepreneurs are going to say, I don't know, I just have it, and it's what I want to do.
You just brought something to the forefront. My dad was a critical care nurse the whole time I was growing up, and he has such a work ethic. Religiously 5 days a week plus weekends on call the whole time. I knew him in his professional career was in the hospital, just constantly. I mean, and he did such a good job providing for us. But I knew for a fact I didn't want that schedule. You know, I wanted the freedom that went along with to being an entrepreneur. So I don't know that it was the antithesis of my father, because I mean, what an example, and the work ethic that he brought. I mean, he was relentless, you know, with what he did for us. But I didn't want to necessarily follow that path either. And so maybe that's part of it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. I think, you know, I think like you said, you just got it, right? We've got it.
Yeah, I do.
And you see it in other people. I see it a lot in other people, and I think I can identify it really well. It's just like when I saw you and met you, I wasn't doing anything huge. I mean, I had done, you know, I had ramped my business up from doing one deal and built a little bit of a team at that point. But I mean, you very quickly came on the scene and just started blowing things up. And I knew that, I mean, I could tell just from meeting you and talking to you in a short period of time that would happen if you put your mind to it. And whatever you put yourself into, it was obvious the kind of character and person that you are with this drive, that you're going to take over and dominate in whatever you do, which is really cool. I think you can tell when you meet other people and talk to other people, like they're kind of level almost on this scale of driven. And you were relentless in talking to people and getting information, and your confidence was really impressive. And I think you had been doing some deals for another investor. So you had an idea of what was what, and you're like, I can do this. If these guys can do it, I can do it, which I think is, you know, obviously part of that event is us saying, you know, hey, it's pretty obvious that if these people up on stage can go from never doing a deal to doing a bunch of volume, then so can you. And part of this series that we're doing is just to determine, like, what are the core characteristics that you need to really get to that level and blow things up. So you came, go ahead.
I was told no for 7-figure. And so maybe that's part of it, because I felt like I had something to prove, like I can do it. And it just goes right back to it. Like I was told no. I went back. I started marketing and put a bunch of deals on the board, and then went to Salt Lake City, met with Andy, and got the invite. So I was.
So what you mean? Like, describe that. What do you mean by you were told no? So tell the story.
Well, they took applications for 7-figure there at Flip Hacking Live, which was my first event, and I still worked for somebody else. So I hadn't actually done deals on my own. You know, well, they're like, how much revenue did you do last year? I said, well, did 3 million, but it was for somebody else. Well, come back when you know, there are people here that have done a lot more than you. And so I was dismissed from the application pool. And I wanted in. I wanted in because I knew what a good opportunity it was, and seeing you and the other guys on stage, I knew that I could learn a ton. And I knew I had a good foundation, but knowing how to buy them is not knowing how to run and operate a flipping and wholesaling business. And so I wanted to be surrounded by the pack. And that was the discussion. Well, you go back and put some numbers on the board, and then come back and talk to us. And so that's what I had to do.
So what did it feel like when, like, what did that do to you when they said, no, sorry, you can't join this group. You don't have the experience.
Initially it was disappointment. Like, you know, that's, I wanted to take my ball and go home for a quick split seconds. And then I was like, well, I've got to do it. Like it wasn't even really an option. It was more of, what's my best route? And I stayed in contact. With Andy. You know, how have you done it? He was really helpful. And then I maximized a few marketing channels, and you know, and then I approached them because there was there's Runway now. There was a different group, and they well, you probably ought to go into Runway. I said, well, that's a little too. I'm not a Runway level. You know, I'm not necessarily. I may not be 7-figure, but I'm kind of in between, and. So I proposed a kind of a hybrid, and it worked.
Yeah. So I remember that you kind of jumped in, started executing, did what you needed to do, doing deals, and then very easily kind of came into the group and just became a leader almost from the beginning. And that's what I see in a lot of this is like that drive and the problem solving and the risk taking and the passion and the visionary stuff, like all of these things combined. When that happens, it's easy to become an early leader inside of a group or anything that you're doing. You come on a team, probably you're one of the early adopters of leadership. You're kind of the captain of the team. Probably you're very quickly to move up from junior varsity to varsity in high school and things like that. So, I don't know where all of that came from for me, but I feel like if you put me in a room, I'm going to want to take over and take control. And I think that's the drive that a lot of us have. We don't want to take a back seat, and we want to be the ones in the spotlight, basically. And I attributed a lot of this stuff to that person who wants the ball at the last second of the game to make the winning shot or whatever it is in any analogy that you put that with. It's that person who, for all these traits, they want to be the one in the spotlight to win or lose, like fail or succeed. They want to be the person who's driving the bus. So
it's that high. You want control of your destiny.
Yep. Yeah. You want to be, and you're willing to take the heat. Like you're willing to miss the shot. I mean, there's a great Michael Jordan quote about like he's, missed more game-winning shots than he's made, things like that. Like he wants to be in the spotlight, wants the ball, and his team wants to give him the ball, right? Because they know that they have the best chance to win if he has it. And so other people will recognize that in you too. So let's talk about your business a little bit. You came in, and with this drive and these other traits, you were able to ramp things up pretty quick. Can you just give us the quick rundown of what that looked like, since we talked about Flip Hacking Live? And then how do you think that skill allowed you to do what you did, like that drive?
Well, drive and coachability, really, I think were two things that helped, because I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel, and the hard knocks school of real estate is pretty expensive, so I tried to listen to you and Andy and everybody else that would give me advice, and so I maximized a few marketing channels, and we quickly started wholesaling in a remote market. I can be living in Denver, and my market, because of a non-compete, was Wichita, Kansas, still is. And we did break the million in our first year. We did over 100 transactions, and that was my goal. And we hit it. And then the second year, we almost doubled, but we worked twice as hard. We did twice the transactions, and we made less money. So we grew really rapidly, but we really were inefficient. And then in the third year, I went ahead and I hired a COO, or an operations manager, and we've seen a lot of turnover, and we were right on the precipice of kind of lifting off, and the corona virus hit. Like, we've got a pretty full bench, and so now our focus is just to get through this and keep everybody on board for when the market opens back up. But we're still doing deals. It's just I don't know about you, but we've seen some friction with appointments, and then also with disposition in the market. So currently we've got acquisition in Kansas City and Wichita, and we have a disposition person that works for us, and we're going to stay in those two markets. And eventually my goal is to come back here too and have a team here in Denver. But it's essentially what we're doing.
Cool. So very quickly out of the gate to a million, 100 deals, and then double that with some 1.9. So with some inefficiencies, which maybe we'll talk about if we have time, and then moving into this year, transitioning, bringing in a COO, which, as you and I have talked about on this podcast a little bit, and Nate's come on the podcast a couple times before that -2 event that we did. It's a challenge to do that. You want to remove yourself from the day-to-day operations, bring somebody in. Like high turnover seems to be potentially what's going to happen then, because you're bringing somebody else in a little bit different. You're realizing that you're not the person anymore who. I think accountability is the big thing there, but I don't think we'll go down that road too much on this podcast, maybe another one in the future. But what happens is, a lot of times you don't have the right people in the company. And when somebody else shows you the mirror, like, hey, look at this, you look at it differently. And you got to build a team that works for both of you when that happens. And I think what happens is we think that something looks one way, but when somebody gets in and holds people accountable and is working full time, it doesn't look that way. So, what's interesting, you said coachability and drive. So I wonder if we don't dig into that a little bit, because it's almost like, it seems like that could be a problem for some people that are really driven, to actually like slow down and listen to what other people have to say and not think they know everything. So I think there's hopefully a line between driven and know-it-all. Like, I'll just do it myself, and the one-man show kind of thing. Because I think that ego and drive get put hand in hand. And there's a good
Yeah.
side of ego and this negative side of ego where, don't tell me, I already know, or I'll figure it out on my own kind of thing. So I think a lot of people with drive could potentially have this, I'll just go be the pioneer and figure it out. So what, has that always been the case for you? Like, listening to others and be coachable? Or, and do you think that, like, on your team, you've hired and fired a bunch of people, you got people that come in that are driven all the time. What do you see with that? Can that be an issue with people that are really driven that just won't listen and won't be coachable?
Yes and yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's been a skill that I've had to develop over time. I mean, I was at one point in my life probably too full of ego, and I think it takes, like in 08, 09, you really have to go through something that lets you realize as a human, or at least I did, that okay, I'm not the end all be all, and maybe maybe a few people have been through this before me, and I need to listen. And it starts out with your parents. And a big one for me was when I shattered my leg. It was a real touch with mortality, because I didn't know if I'd walk again, or all the stuff that I went through, and then my son. And so, going through those personal trials have tempered the steel, if you will. Instead of it being, I think I know it all. It's more of I know I've got the ability, but I really need to follow these other people that have blazed a trail and that have proven this is the way to do it. And I've done enough hard knocks that I just am not a fan. So that's been a skill that's been developed, or a trait that's been developed over time. But then with people, yeah, it's a big deal if you hire people that are super driven, and they can. I mean, you can hire the Michael Jordan, but if they don't get along with everybody else, they'll sour your whole team. And well, going back to the COO and the scaling, I don't think it's just 100%. Looking back on it now, that had the chance, we've had more turnover, and it's been a learning curve. But I think some of it was the way I handled it. And I was to the point where I really wanted to pass the baton, because it was just too much, and what I was dealing with. And instead of, and part of it is, I think, our companies and our industry, that we don't have a runway like a Fortune 50. You can't bring somebody in and give them a 6-month ramp up. Well, you're just going to shadow me for 6 months. You got to put them in quicker than that. So maybe it's 6 weeks. And I noticed, because I think I had some of the people that I had were potential long-term players, and some definitely needed that turnover cycle. But there was a snowball effect, and when you have one bad apple, they can taint the whole bunch. And so maybe a little bit slower to transition, a little bit more gently. If I would have done that, we might have been able to filter out the ones that we wanted to leave, and retain the ones that I think would have been are really good. But that's also, as an owner, you learn things every day, and that was part of that curve. But when you do hire people that are driven, if they're not willing to be coachable, then they're only going, I think they'll just be okay. Because if you're driven and you're talented, you can fake it, or you can do probably as much as somebody with a really, really high work ethic that's an average performer, right? They can, but if they want to be excellent, that's the difference, is having that coachability, and then taking what's really been done well, and implementing it, and potentially improving it.
So how do you find that in somebody?
That's a great question. Hiring is a toughie, and because my experience is, you see the best side of people when you're interviewing them, and it's really difficult to screen that in a 3, 4, 5 hour process. I think as an employer, you don't want to have a revolving door, but there's a book called Top Grading where you're always looking to put A players in every position in your company. And I think that's really the approach, the systematic approach you need to take as a business owner is you're always looking for top talent because A players want to play with A players. And if you continue to pluck, and prune like a tree, your organization, you will eventually get to the point where you have that, full bench of starters.
Well, the reason I ask that is because I think that, some of it is some people might be listening to this going, I'm not really sure if I'm coachable either. Like, they're in that time earlier that maybe I don't know. I agree with you. When I was younger, I had to go through you said, go through something, like go through some trials and tribulations and things. And through all of that, I got to know myself a lot better. And through this, I think the time that I've known myself best has been over these last 5 years building this company, because I've really had to dig down deep and figure out, who am I and what are my strengths and weaknesses, and actually understand that and be okay with it. And then this hiring process is a big part of self-identifying a lot of my weaknesses of what am I doing wrong? And going to that 6th trait that Gino talks about, responsible, like ownership in my mind, is like you mentioned a couple times on this interview, is my fault, you said. And I wanted to pass the baton really fast, you mentioned. And so I was the same way. Like, I feel like a lot of what happens is it's 100% me. I've had some great people, some really A players, some driven folks that could have been really well and who could have done really well inside the company. And I just screwed the pooch on it because I didn't train them right. I didn't spend enough time with them. I tried to pass the buck too fast, like you talked about. And there might be 1 or 2 people that can keep up with that, but if you don't know yourself and really figure it out, so I think you're going to be in trouble. I think the biggest thing is knowing where you are on that cycle of know-it-all-ness,
Yeah.
and am I coachable, and how coachable am I? Because I've seen that even inside the mastermind group. We have people that come in that, think they know everything, and they just don't listen, or they don't pay, or they don't jump in. They don't replicate all the things. I feel like I did exactly what you did. Fortunately, I was at the point in my company, I use the word company like in air quotes if you're not watching this loosely, because it was me doing 1 deal a year, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing when I joined 7-figure flipping. So it was very easy for me to be humble and say, you guys obviously know what you're doing. I'm ready to be a sponge. And then I've seen people come in and say, I already know what I'm doing. I just want to figure out what you guys are doing, and maybe that'll help. And they don't really commit. They don't jump all in. They don't, replicate the successful businesses, and they struggle through it all. I wonder if this something, I mean, you mentioned this coronavirus time. So I've recorded some of these episodes out of order, and we're in a different time now than I've recorded a couple of the other episodes that we're going to talk about on these 6 traits. But this could be that something for a lot of people out there that are determining how driven they are. And am I coachable?
Sure.
And what do I want to be? What do I want this company to look like? Do I want to stay here? Like, I think this has the potential. This is the transformation time in a lot of people and a lot of people's businesses to see, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to stick with it? Do I have a payroll of $100,000 a month? Is this what I want my business to look like? And that could be that something that you talked about, that event that causes them to determine how driven they are, and are they an entrepreneur like through and through? Because when I look at this a month ago, so we're recording this on, what's it, April 13th or something? I think it's April 13th. We're at a point now, we're about a month into when I just finished a 30-day Facebook Live challenge on leadership. So all the stuff had started before that. So about 35 days, 40 days into this. And I remember when it got started, I was like, here we go. This is a little bit exciting for me. I'm ready to be tested. Like, let me see if I can come out of this on top. Let me see if I can come out of this bigger, better, stronger than I was before. Let this wash out a bunch of my competition. Let me see how I can win and dominate and drive through this myself, with the help of everybody else, right? And listen to people and still be a sponge in people who have been doing this for 30 years, 40 years that I can talk to. So most people are going, oh crap, I'm not interested in feeling this way. This is uncomfortable. Where the driven people are like running into the burning building and everybody else is running out, is the way I looked at this. And I don't want like downplay what's happening or make anybody feel like I'm really excited about an opportunity here and be insensitive. But I feel like the true entrepreneurs are the ones who are like, yes, like it's a test. What can we do? How can we win? And we're always trying to win. And right now, that's the thing. I'm looking at it like a puzzle, and I'm trying to plan for contingencies and lots of other things. And this could be that something that you talked about that other people need. So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
That wield them. Yeah. It's I mean, full transparency, right when it hit and I realized everything was shutting down initially, I was like, oh, is this the way? Because I looked at our burn rate and everything that's going on, and yeah, I mean, if you didn't think that, is this the way I want my business to look? I think you're a little bit of an ostrich, but I didn't really ever think I'm going to shut it down. It was okay. Well, how does it look going through this, and what do we look like on the other side? Absolutely. And fortunately, unfortunately, in any, there's an opposite reaction. So if there's a downturn here, if there's an economic shift, businesses like ours, there will be, like in '08, there were fortunes made in real estate because the values plummeted, and so are you positioned to take advantage of that? And do you have the relationships? And so that's the puzzle pieces is exactly right. It's like, what does this look like on the back end? And I don't know 100% that I've nailed that down, but I do know that we're going to come out stronger as a result of it. And what does that look like today? It looks like what we're doing, which is just staying focused on, our basics, get back to the very fundamentals. We've adjusted our calculators and stuff, but down the road, I think it's stay engaged with your lenders and be ready to pounce when the opportunity presents itself. Cause I think it's coming. Yeah. Do you?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like when I talked to Bruce
I'm not
Norris,
sure
it was a
either.
very, very interesting conversation that I had with him. I think the lenders and the foreclosures will kind of drive that, like he talked about. So it was very interesting. And obviously, I think the big catalyst here, and I don't necessarily know that we need to go too deep into this, but I think the big catalyst is the length of time that things are shut down. So right now we still have no idea what that looks like. And if we go back out into the marketplace and we see another spike and then they pull back again, just how we do that. So it's it'll be interesting to see, but I'll tell you, it's been 30 or 40 days and we haven't really done much different inside of our company right now in those 30 days. So I just reflected on that yesterday, and it was really interesting to see that over these last 30 days, we haven't adjusted our marketing. We haven't adjusted our team. We actually hired a couple more people, the full commission. We're leveraging some of the government subsidies that have come out, this paycheck protection program for my W-2 staff. But ultimately, we haven't done much different. I haven't seen the data that we need to drive a change in what we do. So it's interesting that looking back 40 days, I thought for sure we would be doing something different today. When I got on a call with Nate, right when all this stuff happened and we were starting to talk about it, I was like, well, let's watch the data and see how we need to change. And I do think we need to be looking forward in all of it, but this real estate is very like slow moving animal.
Yeah.
We're not going to see a 12% drop in real estate values overnight like we did in the stock market. So we have time to adjust, but so that's what I'm looking at, just the kind of data and see. So I'm going to be the first one to say I have no idea what's going to happen, but I have some theories and I have some some contingency plans for us moving forward. But I think that this is like this is obviously that something that a lot of people need to either jump in or jump out. So like this is the time to decide, like, are you an entrepreneur? Are you ready to take this kind of pressure? Like, do you want to be in the driver's seat when something like this happens? And I do. And so if you're driven, if you have this trait, then you're going to be the one who wants to go through something like this. And because it's a test, it's just another game. Like, honestly, when I look at this, when I look at business and I look at money as like a scoreboard. I'm not somebody who wants a ton of money. I need to buy fancy things. It's just another way to keep score, it seems, for most entrepreneurs that are super driven. They want to win, right? It's somebody who's keeping score. It's just another way to keep score. Like, I don't care. Give it away. Well, it does make things easier, but initially when I was building my company and trying to figure things out, that's what I cared about, because we didn't have any of it. And I was trying to figure out how to make some of it so I could leave my, I wouldn't get deployed. I could be home with the family. I could do all that stuff. And then it's become a whole lot more since then. So it's interesting to see this when we go through something like this, a transition test, if you will. Then are you interested in being a part of it, or do you run away and want to kind of, like you said, ostrich,
Yeah.
dump your head in the sand? So
I do
that's
think it's going to release some of the competition we are facing.
Yeah, I think the people that are, you talk about positioning, like we're not in the best position for this to happen right when it did. And I think a lot of people aren't. Like, you never really know when something's going to happen. But the question is, like, in your gut, are you like, okay, what now? Or are you going, oh crap, I'm in the worst position. What do I do? This doesn't feel good. I'm out of here. I'm going to run away from it and dump the mortgages and do all that stuff. So I think the people who are in the best position at things like this are the people who have the skills and the knowledge to be excited about it, be ready to figure it out. And then you've got the people who are just getting started. Maybe they're a one-man show or they're jumping into the business. They have the ability now to jump in. Like, I look at these, like a stock investor, it's just because a lot of people know about stocks and ups and downs. When the market's down 30% and you're investing for the first time as an 18-year-old kid and you just started your IRA, it's like the best time to jump in, right? But when you're about to retire and the stock market's down and you're aggressive still because you didn't go into cash and bonds and allocate your assets right, then you're going, oh crap, my whole portfolio just went down 30%. I'm retiring next week. So there's a good time and a bad time for this stuff to happen. And so same thing here. I think if people were scaling and dumping a bunch of money, hadn't made money for a year and a half and are going, yes, like 2020 is my year to blow up my business and I can finally start making money, those people are probably in a bad position or situation because they were growing and scaling. And then you've got the people who are just getting started, or the people who have cash in the bank and are, but the interesting thing, and they're going to have trouble, obviously. I think the big thing is, they can never take our experience and our knowledge and anything like that. It doesn't go with a market shift or change. So we can take all that and parlay it and go all in on what we're doing. And I think the driven people are the people, like I said, who are running at this stuff. They're deep down, they're like, this is going to be fun. Regardless of how I do, if I win or lose, if I make the shot or don't make the shot, I'm going to enjoy playing the game over this next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And I think that's where I am. And I suspect that's probably where you are. And wherever this hit us, we're in control of our destiny and our outcome.
Yes, I would agree with that. I still, I don't want to downplay it. I do think I was aggressively scaling, right? So this definitely could have been better timed for us, but it is what it is. It's not like I can't change that. What I can do is control what I do moving forward. And that's what we're doing. We're controlling the controllables, and we're still getting deals. And I firmly believe that we will come out of this stronger, because what it's done is exposed all of our inefficiencies. All the little dings on the credit card that, I'll deal with that next month because I'm too busy. All those all of a sudden become a huge focus. And so, you really go to tighten your cash machine, and, it's making us stronger. So would I have preferred that it not happen? Sure. But is it going to be a good thing? I believe so.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, the weaknesses and inefficiencies, it's looking at the issues with the armor right now, and we're diving into it. And if you're not, you need to make sure that you're doing that for sure. I guess what's the negative side of this? We talk about being driven, and I try to touch on this a little bit towards the end of each of these episodes. Is what's the negative side of being like too driven or having this characteristic? Have you ever seen something in your life or in your business where it has like reared its ugly head and showed you the negative side of this, or what you're potentially concerned about?
Well, from a family perspective, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit.
These things, you're home, but nobody's home. you know?
Yeah.
And
And by the way,
um,
Jeremiah's holding up his phone. If you're not watching on YouTube or something,
yeah,
he's
that's my
holding up his
phone.
phone. So.
It's easy to that drive. It's easy to be all in all the time. You know, it could be 10 o'clock at night and ding, you know, something goes off and um, it would totally wait until the morning, but I have a hard time waiting until the morning. And so I've really had to work personally, and I'm not perfect at it. I'll be the first to admit, to try and have a better work personal balance, because I approach it with that, you know, relentless pursuit, and it uh, it tends to affect your personal life, your family, you know, your kids and everybody else, because they know, well, dad's working, you know, dad's working, and the whole reason why we do this is to spend time with them, you know, to provide for them and to have a better or a good situation for your family, and it seems like they get the brunt of it sometimes, which is a negative.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that you can become consumed by things very easily. So like an addictive personality, where the people who the drive trait to me is like the gas. You just got your foot on the
Yes,
gas all the time, right?
and I like to
And
floor it.
yeah, I know. I've been snowboarding with you while you're skiing down the mountain doing like 80 miles an hour. So I have no doubt that you do. And I think that's it. That's what we this driven trait is like, how hard do you step on the gas really? And is it just lead foot, always on, always down? And a lot of times we have trouble unplugging from that. I agree. I have the same issue. You can ask anybody who knows me well, or my family, that I mean, I remember when I was getting this going, I'd have my phone, and Will would have to say "Daddy" 3 times before I even heard him, because I was looking at my
Yes,
phone and my email. And then I would say, "What am I doing? Like, why am I doing this?" And I still struggle with that. I do that work-life balance, the unplugging. I'm here. We just got an office about a month and a half ago down the street from my house. It's like right across from my house. It took me 2 minutes to get here this morning, if that. And it's been nice, because now when I leave here, I do feel a difference than just walking out of my office into my kitchen. So what this virus has done is it's forced me out of my house into this office that I would never, I only come like once a week here. And now I've been here every day for the last 3 weeks. And it has given me some of that balance.
it's
I think
helping.
it is helping a bit. Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's still there a little bit, but not as much, because I mean, I just always felt like I was at home. So I think this drive, we talked about some of the other negatives with not being coachable and thinking you know everything. That know-it-all driven person is a challenge. But I think some of the other traits will help with that, like the responsible trait, like saying it's my fault and things. So I think there's a check and balance there with that, which that responsible ownership side is a little bit of the break. But I think the real driven entrepreneur folks need some help with the brakes a lot of times. Like we need
Yeah.
somebody to come in and be the brake for us. And so you know, I think if you're out there and you're listening and you know immediately when I read that paragraph, like that's you. If you're out there saying, yeah, that's me, but I'm not, I do have the time where I don't listen that well. I don't feel like I'm coachable. I think that's something that you can take from this and work on, and really have to go through those trials. If you're younger or older, you just have to see where you are in the cycle. And that's a big part. I think that being humble and being able to understand that you don't know everything, especially when you go into a new opportunity, a new market, a new business, new venture, new anything that you're doing. You got to learn, you got to be coachable. And there's people out there that know 10 times more than you that are willing to give that information to you to help you be successful, which I think in our industry, it's amazing that there's so many opportunities out there to get the knowledge and information and training and coaching that you need to help you ramp something up really quickly, like we did. And
Yeah.
it's just, it doesn't happen in most business worlds. And I think it's really nice to have that. And we need other people who are like us to feel more comfortable about who we are. I talked about getting to know myself.
Yeah.
I feel like if I did this in a vacuum, I would have gotten somewhere. I don't know if I wouldn't have gotten to the success level that I've had. I would have gotten somewhere on my own, but it would have taken a lot longer. And
Yeah,
I
not
would
as quickly for sure.
yeah, absolutely not as quickly. Definitely with more carnage along the way of
Hmm.
like screwing things up and losing and things like that. But I also think what this has really done is it's shined a light on the fact that there's a lot of people out there that are just like me, and it's okay to be like that. You know, you don't have that isolation feeling where
Yeah.
I would go to the RIA meetings locally and talk to people. And there's nothing wrong with those meetings, but I would feel like people wanted to be successful, but they didn't have the level of drive that I had. And I always wanted more. So like, I just was never fulfilled there. And I never thought that there was anybody there that was like exactly like me. I'd kind of look around for somebody who could relate to and share the struggles and good times and bad times that we have now. But obviously the real issue here on the negative side that I see is what I just mentioned. There's never a limit. There's no limiter, right? You always want more. So if you always want more, where do you stop? And I think you can put that energy into different things. And one of them should absolutely be your family. And one of them should absolutely be your friends and social life. And one of them should actually absolutely be your health. And one of them should be your business. One of them should be your finances, and make sure that you're putting enough energy around the whole wheel to make sure that you're not just successful in business and not successful in life when it's all said and done. Spiritual life is another one that I think you should put a lot of energy into. So that's kind of the culmination for me, is getting
For
around
the
the right
driven
people.
person, that takes work, because you don't naturally balance out.
You have to be intentional.
Full throttle. You know, it's like,
oh yeah. And you focus that energy like a laser, you know, and it gets focused in certain areas. And so that's what I saw. I was focused on my business and financial world. And obviously James came around the same time. So I was there with the family, but my health was gone. My spiritual life wasn't that strong. You know, a lot of that stuff was fallen by the wayside, so I could put all of my energy into one thing. And I don't think that's necessarily bad in the beginning. Like, you have to make a decision to put a lot of energy in one area, but when you can't continue to do that for a long period of time. Like, you can't just focus on one or the other, like one of the 10 things or one of the 6 things or 8 things or whatever your wheel looks like in your life. You've really got to spread it out. Right now, I'm like open and honest. I'm working on my family life right now, my spiritual life. And a big thing for me is my friends and fun. Like, my friends and fun don't really exist. You know, I don't have a lot of local people that I spend a lot of time with. My friends I see on podcasts like this. I see them every quarter at our meetings. I see them at our events and things like that. So that's a big part of what I need, is a more maybe regular group of people that I spend time with and do things with locally. So those are some areas that I know that I'm working on, but I'm intentionally working on it. Like, every day when I open my planner, it says what percentage, like, get to 80% or more in those areas. And so that's what I'm working on. And you have to be intentional about it. And I need to get as addicted to that stuff as I am to the business and everything else.
You're pretty good with fitness.
Fitness has changed. It was the last year and a half I have been, but before that, I was overweight, sluggish, and I hadn't been to the gym in probably like 4 or 5 years. So,
oh really? It'd been 4 or 5 years?
So for those of you guys who are listening, I'm like 5'6", but I was 180 pounds. I had a 38-inch waist, like around the love handles. And I'm down to a 31-inch waist and 150 pounds. I was down to 145. I lost 35 pounds and 7 inches in my waist by getting a coach. I got hired somebody to come in, show me how to eat, show me how to work out, do those things. And I still go through that virtual coaching every quarter or so, and get back to healthy. Before the cruise, I hired him again for another quarter and said, hey, I'm starting to eat candy and snacks and sugar and ice cream and stuff again. I need some accountability.
Hold me accountable.
And that's it. I think that's what we do. You know, we hold each other accountable to the entrepreneurial life that we have and help each other through those things, because we do have our foot on the gas all the time. So we need somebody else to kind of just keep us balanced, right, and centered. And I think that's what I love about, this group of people that we have. This the 6 people that I get to bring on here are kind of my board of directors, the people that I get to bounce my ideas off of, my crazy thoughts and plans, and also keep me balanced, check me every now and then and say, hey, Becca's really good at putting me in place now, and just saying, like, hey, do you really think, like, I know you want to do all this stuff, but do you really think that we can do it? Do you have time to do that? Can you do it? And she's a good break for me from time to time, just checking in with her and and keeping me centered and balanced. It's really nice to have. And I think we all need that. So who are your, like the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with, right? The Jim Rohn quote, like who are your 5 people? Who's your tribe? Who are you spending time with? And I think that's a big part of this. And I love the fact that I can bring on my 6 people in my tribe and talk to them about the fact that they have each of these traits in spades. It's pretty obvious. But what are some of the negatives about it? Where do they struggle? You can hear, like, we're all struggling in each of these. There's negatives to all of these things. There's things that can hold you back if you have too much of them or you're not paying attention to it. So I guess the question is, are you driven? What does that look like? And then are you coachable? And if the answer is no, then that's okay. You might be a self-employed individual. You might not be the next Walt Disney or Elon Musk, and Bill Gates or these kind of folks, but you might be somebody that can do something else or can build a business, but you might not have a team of 15 or 20 or 50 people doing millions of dollars a year. And you might be happy with what you're doing. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the big thing here in these 6 episodes that we're doing after Gino's presentation is, who are you? Like, get to know yourself, because that's the start. If you don't know who you are and you're not honest with yourself and saying like, hey, I actually don't want the ball in the last 5 seconds. I actually do want to put my head in the sand right now. Then you're probably not going to make the best entrepreneur. Just the way it is.
No, you got to be able to weather the storm.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, with all the positives, it can have the negatives too. It's a ride.
It is. And it's one that I think if you are an entrepreneur, you love to be on. Like it's a roller coaster, and whether you're at the top or the bottom, you have to enjoy what you're doing. And there's always going to be things that you don't love to do, but as a true entrepreneur, you're gonna enjoy the ride. And I'm enjoying it right now.
Me too.
All right. What any last thoughts for the entrepreneurs out there? Anything, piece of advice that you can give them as they're kind of looking at this journey and saying, and by the way, I know I didn't mention it, but I'm trying to get this is a real estate podcast, but I think this series is hands down the best one that you could send to a young person out there, maybe your kids or your neighbors or somebody that if you can identify these 6 entrepreneurial traits in someone, like, share this with them, because I want this to open their eyes to the fact that this stuff is possible early on in their life or even late in life. If you got somebody who's 50 or 60, you're like, this is that person that I know. Like, share this podcast with them, because I think if I had known that I was this like closet entrepreneur in the military for as long as I was, I may have changed a couple things. Earlier on in my life, looking back, all the signs show that I should have known this like when I was 10 years old or 5 years old or 8 years old, when I was trying to turn every dollar into $4. I knew, looking back, it's obvious. So if my parents had a hold of something like this book or these 6 traits and stuff, a podcast like this, I would have loved to have heard it. So what kind of advice would you have for anybody out there who is like, thinks they might be an entrepreneur or getting started? Like, I don't know, anything.
It goes back to that, with my dad and how he worked, the relentless schedule of a nurse for all those years. And it wasn't that I was running from that, but this has come into focus while we've been on this call, is that I really looked at the opportunity cost of not. My brain is not wired to think, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? What are the bad things that could happen to me from that? That's not the way I think. Maybe I'm a terminal optimist, but it's more of what is it going to cost me if I don't? So I go and I buy houses and I stink at it and I fail. I will never know, if I don't take this leap, if I don't go for it, I have to. And so, if you find yourself in that driven category and you haven't taken that leap, I'm not saying go out and quit your job tomorrow and just jump in, but what will it cost you 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now if you don't try it? Because what if it works, and that's where I was, I needed to do it. And the opportunity cost of not doing it, what is it going to cost me if I don't was too great. So
Yeah.
that's, the advice I would say, if you've got the itch, pursue it, pursue it as much as your risk tolerance will allow, and then find mentors to help you remove the risk.
I love it. You mentioned something, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I did this exercise once where it was, if you write down all the things that you think like that are stopping you from doing something, like what's this, like, what are the reasons that you're not going to do something, that you're going to say no? And because we tell stories in our mind of what ifs, right? What could happen? This could happen. This could happen. If you write all that stuff down and then you just say like, what's the worst thing if that happens? Like what's going to happen if that actually comes true? And what about if that comes true? And you have a list of 5 or 6 things that's stopping you from doing that. And then you write down what's the worst thing that could happen if all of those things come true. You'll start realizing that it's not that big of a deal. Like it's not as big as you're making it up in your mind. So it could be a very easy way, if you are one of those people who thinks about the worst thing, like the negatives, all the why I shouldn't instead of why I should. So you're the person who's saying, I mean, I can't afford not to do that. Like, why wouldn't I go do it? And you don't even think about the negatives. Sure. And then the people who are thinking about the negatives, they don't think about the good side of what can do. And they're just kind of weighing all the negatives to outweigh the one thing that they think is positive. But when you sit down and really look at it, like there's not anything that's going to, it's not going to kill you. It's not going to do a lot of these other things that are just easily, you can get over that stuff. You can get past it. So, you mentioned getting around those people, spending time with them, like you can't afford not to. And we also talked about this time that we're in, the season, the coronavirus. We're all kind of hunkered down in our houses, not getting out and socializing that much. So we're ending this podcast, but I'd like to invite you guys to come in October to Flip Hacking Live in Orlando with us. So I know what's going to happen. You guys are going to be enclosed in a house. You're going to be like, right now you're feeling like, man, my next event was canceled. The event in April, the event in May, June, July, what's going to happen? Well, October, I foresee Disney World will be open. We're right down the street from there. We're going to all come together. I think this is going to be a really exciting time where we're going to start getting back out there. We're going to be back out of our houses. We're going to be able to get together. We're going to see each other. We're going to spend time together. We're going to be at a live event. And I think it's going to be perfect timing for something like this to just get us all back together, to give the tips and tricks and all the things that we're doing. So you guys can, right now, you're sitting at your house, you're not spending money on restaurants and movies and bars and all of these things. So go over to fliphackinglive.com, get your ticket, mark off October 15th through the 17th, and come join us in Orlando. The airplane tickets are super cheap right now. It's a great time to book all your travel, book your travel, get your ticket, mark it on the calendar, and have that thing be your kind of drive and your guiding light to get you through this, to say, hey, I'm going to get through here so I can be there in October. I'm going to soak up all the information. I'm not going to binge on Netflix. I'm going to binge on building my capabilities. I'm going to binge on understanding my market to get to know all these things. Or this is going to be the time that I do. That's something that I'm going to get through to transition into real estate. Maybe you're not a real estate investor, but you want to be. This event is for anybody who's never gotten started to anybody who's doing hundreds of deals a year. We bring the heat, bring the value for 3 days, and people like Jeremiah and everybody else that I bring on the podcast over the next few weeks are speaking there. So I think it's a great time for me to push you and challenge you to say, go put something on your calendar, have something that gives you some motivation, some excitement to move forward, to have that thing that's out there, that carrot that's dangling to keep you going and keep you driving. So I think Flip Hacking Live can do that. It's an amazing event. We're putting together an incredible schedule for those 3 days, October 15th, 16th, and 17th in Orlando, Florida. We've moved from San Diego to Orlando. The resort is beautiful, lazy river, all this. It's awesome. I can't wait. I am just talking about it. I'm getting pumped up and excited about me being able to leave the house, fly the airplane, go down there, and see all my friends like we talked about. So
gosh, I can't wait either. I'm being cooped up like this. Woo.
Yep. And it's snowing behind you too. So that probably helps, thinking about Orlando, the pool, stuff like that. So, okay. The last thing, so you guys can go to fliphackinglive.com. You can grab a ticket. The ticket prices are super cheap for the event right now too. Airplane tickets are cheap. Get it all booked up, get it all set up. We've got a link for the hotel that gets sent out with after you buy your ticket. So you have a discounted link for the hotel, and we'd love to see you guys there. And if you're not watching this on YouTube or our website, sevenfigureflipping.com, I recommend you go there, because you can see Jeremiah sporting a mohawk today. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, on iTunes or Stitcher, SoundCloud, whatever, you guys didn't know that, but you can pop over to YouTube or our website and see Jeremiah's awesome mohawk. So it's the Corona hawk that he's got going on right now. So yeah, what's up with that?
End of the school year, we do them. I have 2 boys, 4 and 7, and every year when school's over, and school's over, so we shave them up this weekend.
So you shave a mohawk, and then you're getting ready to go from Denver to Wichita to work this week. It's probably a good thing that you're in like the construction business and real estate, sporting a mohawk.
Hat.
Professional. Hat to be professional. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Jeremiah. Well, thanks for spending time with me today. And I know everybody's going to enjoy this. You're a super driven guy. It's very obvious that you always want to win. So it's nice to be in competition, like secret competition with some of you guys, and always trying to kind of one up each other in a friendly competition. So it's nice to have you kind of somebody to chase, and Andy obviously, and Adam and Mike and all these guys. It's just, and Terry. It's so much fun to chase you guys, whether it's spiritually, personally, professionally, all that stuff. It's helpful. So thanks for doing what you do, man, and being a part of it.
Thank you.
All right, go to flipbackandlive.com, get your ticket. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to be in person outside of our house at the hotel. Jeremiah told you that's where he went. That's where it was his first intro to this, and now doing a couple $1 million a year is absolutely amazing. So flipbackandlive.com, grab your ticket. We'll see you guys there. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
You've been listening to the 7-Figure Flipping Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. If you're ready to learn the house flipping and wholesaling strategies that are working right now in today's market, check out 7figureflipping.com.